Hello everyone, welcome to another learning session of Foundation of Programming at CodeMode, where you learn by practice. Currently you are learning about web development, and in today's class we will learn about JavaScript. Before I start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, especially if you are watching on YouTube. For a complete course and practice, go to our platform my.codemode.us. Let's begin. So far we have learned about two parts of a web page. One is HTML, which provides the structure, and second is CSS, which provides the styling. The third one is JavaScript, which is responsible for interaction on the page. What I mean by interaction is all the links and buttons. When you click some of the drop down, when you click and select a drop down, select an item or entry in the drop down, something else can happen. In the parent you have list of countries, and in this drop down you can select a country from here, and you will notice that next drop down that has list of states changes and shows the state of the selected country. The data in this one changes based on the selection in the country drop down, right? How does that happen? JavaScript primarily loads the data, brings the data for us, and dynamically changes the content of this element, and that is possible thanks to JavaScript. JavaScript is also responsible for doing some basic validation, and I'll briefly talk about it in a minute. Now, JavaScript is the brain of the web page. It makes the page alive using interactions, as I talked. JavaScript is a programming language, but it is an interpreted programming language. It is not a compiled. It runs inside a web browser. That's most important. When you create a JavaScript file, you can create a JavaScript file using a text or any code editor. You can use Notepad or you can use Visual Studio Code. In fact, CodeMode is working to provide an interface where you will be able to write your JavaScript code too. It's coming soon. You typically write your JavaScript code in a .js file. That means I can write my script1.js. The extension here is .js. For HTML, extension is .html. I can say page1.html. For a style sheet, we can say file name is style1.css. CSS is the extension. So for JavaScript, it's .js file. You create a JS file, write some code, save it with JS extension, and then similar to style sheet, you come back and refer the JavaScript in your HTML using script tag. Script tag, it goes inside the head. Script tag has a attribute called source, src, and you give the name of the file you created. So when the web page is loaded by the browser, it loads the style sheet and also loads the JavaScript file, assuming that you have created and referenced. Those files are loaded, and now style sheet is immediately applied, whereas JavaScript waits for you to do something like click a button. In some cases, the style sheet is the JavaScript is also used to hide or show a particular part of the web page. All this interaction, clicking a button, changing the content of a drop down, hiding a content based on some click, hiding a part of the page, all of that happens using JavaScript. But then key thing is that you must invoke it. You must do something on the page, and corresponding to that action, a JavaScript function or JavaScript code may run. A JavaScript code looks like this. You put it in a tag, script, and you write code inside here. And you can say basic code that says window.alert 5+6. When I run this JavaScript, it will show 11 on the screen. Now, in majority of the cases, we write this code, you can write the code in the HTML itself using this tag, or I can write in a separate file and reference this like this script. There are two ways you can do it. This is called inline and this is called external JavaScript. This is external and this is inline. I put it inside the HTML page itself. Now both are good way. The key thing is, learning the JavaScript. It's sort of a programming language. So after this course, you may want to dig little deeper into HTML, CSS, and also learn JavaScript, so that you can create a useful web page. Now, as I said, in a typical web page, if you remember, we talk about request and response model. That means when we send a request, if this is a client, and this is a server, the client is nothing but your browser, and server is where we are storing all the pages, right? So when you make a request and response comes back to you. Now imagine a situation where you are a web page where you are entering your basic information like in the age, and the system or the web page requires you to be at least 16 years old. Now what will happen is, typically when you enter the date as a user, you enter the date, it will go to the server and it will come back again and say, sorry, you're not 16-year-old. But then it's a waste of resources going to the server and returning an error message just to validate the data. Remember I talked about that this is a presentation and this is your processing. To process the data that you are not 16 years or you are not 18 years old yet, you have to make one round trip. Nowadays, JavaScript is useful in this scenario where you can do basic validation on the client side itself. Because JavaScript runs inside the browser, I can write code in the JavaScript to check if the age is 16 years or not, and then stop user from doing something. That way I don't have to send the request, I don't have to send the data to the server and come back. So some basic validation is done in the JavaScript, and to save a round trip back to the server. Round trip of data back to the server. This gives a better user experience. The JavaScript is used to improve the user's experience. Imagine a page where you are on some click. I'm giving another example. There are two sections, section 1 and section 2. If I click a button, I want to show section 2 and hide section 1. If there is no JavaScript, I have to send it to the server, and server will return another page in which S1 is hidden and S2 is shown. But using JavaScript, I can do this page manipulation on the browser itself, and I can hide this and show this using JavaScript function. JavaScript provides you functionality where you can manipulate the web page on the client side itself. That means the user who is browsing this page, I'm using the processing power of that computer. I don't need to go to the server. So that gives better experience. That saves users time because I don't have to make a round trip to the server, and it also saves server's resources. Server doesn't have to process basic data validation, which can be done in the client side itself. So hope this makes sense. The power of JavaScript is very, very useful when you learn web development. JavaScript, you should definitely learn JavaScript. Now that's all in today's class, and in fact today is the last class. This is the last concept of foundation of programming. We have come a long way. Thank you very much for watching this. Thank you very much for staying with me. I hope you enjoy this course. My recommendation would be to either learn a programming language like Python or Java, or at least JavaScript and HTML and CSS. I plan to make one more video on JavaScript and CSS, make a course in fact on it. Stay tuned. And for now, good luck, and once again, thank you very much.